They don't have smartphones. They don't rely on supermarkets. And yet, Amish communities across America live with a kind of abundance most of us only dream about. Part of that secret? Their orchards. The Amish don't just plant random fruit trees. They grow specific varieties that serve real practical purposes. Trees that feed, heal, preserve, and protect. These 10 fruits aren't just old-fashioned. They're powerful, dependable, and often overlooked by modern growers. Once you see why the Amish stick to these 10, you'll probably want to do the same. Number 1, apples. You see apple trees almost everywhere in Amish communities, and that's no accident. These people don't just grow them because they taste good. Apples are one of the most reliable and resource-efficient fruit trees you can have if you're living off-grid. The Amish have been cultivating apple orchards for generations, and they've figured out what works and what doesn't. They don't waste time on novelty. They stick with trees that give consistent yields, require minimal intervention, and serve multiple purposes. That's exactly what apples do. One of the most important reasons Amish families grow apples is the variety. Some apple types ripen as early as July, while others hold out until October. That means the harvest isn't a chaotic, all-at-once situation. It's staggered, manageable. It fits into the rhythm of their lives, where everything from baking bread to milking cows is structured and predictable. And they don't rely on one or two types. Heirloom varieties like Smokehouse, Winesap, Black Amish, and Roxbury Russet are common. These aren't your grocery store apples. They're dense, complex, often tart, and packed with nutrients. But most importantly, they've stood the test of time. They're naturally more resistant to common pests and diseases, so Amish farmers don't need synthetic sprays or fancy treatments. Apples also preserve extremely well. Most Amish homes have root cellars dug right into the ground, cool, dark, and humid enough to keep apples fresh for months without refrigeration. Families wrap the apples individually in newspaper or store them in wooden crates with straw insulation. That kind of low-tech storage is vital when you're not using electricity. It's not just about eating them fresh either. They dehydrate apple slices for snacks, make apple butter, cider, vinegar, and even molasses from boiled cider. Every part of the apple gets used, and the peel goes into livestock feed or compost, and the cores can be used for homemade pectin or fermented into scrap vinegar. There's also an economic side to this. Amish roadside stands, which often sit at the edge of farms near main roads, sell fresh apples and homemade apple products to passersby. That small-scale income can make a big difference for a family. During apple season, it's not uncommon for families to make dozens of jars of applesauce, jelly, and apple pie filling. These aren't just treats, they're calories for the winter, especially when fresh produce is scarce. You'll also notice that apple trees often double as shade trees in pastures or near barns. They're part of the landscape and the lifestyle. Kids climb them, livestock rest under them, and every spring the blossoms attract bees from the farm's hives. And because apple trees live a long time, some more than 100 years, they're a legacy crop. When a family plants an apple orchard, it's not just for their own benefit. It's for their children and grandchildren. That's the Amish way. Long-term thinking, full use of every resource, and deep respect for the land. Number 2, pears. Amish families grow pears for a simple reason. They last. Not just the trees, which can live 50 to 75 years or more, but the fruit itself. Pears, especially Kefir and Bartlett types, store well in cool conditions and ripen slowly. You pick them when they're mature but still firm, and they soften off the tree. That means they don't bruise as easily in harvest, and the Amish take full advantage of that. They pack them carefully into wooden boxes and keep them in the root cellars just like apples. But it's not just about storage, it's about versatility. Pears go into preserves, they get poached with cinnamon, sliced into pies, and even canned whole. In some households, you'll even find pickled pears, sweet and spiced, a recipe passed down from grandmothers who grew up without refrigeration. The skins and cores, again, go to compost or feed animals. Nothing is wasted. Some families even dry them into chewy pear slices using simple solar dehydrators made from old window frames and mesh screens. Kefir pears are especially valued because they're practically indestructible. They'll grow in clay soil, they'll take a beating from wind, and they still produce. They may not be supermarket pretty, but they're dependable, and that's what matters when you live off-grid. Pear trees also bloom later than apples, which helps avoid frost damage in colder zones. The Amish think ahead like that. They know a single bad frost can wipe out a harvest, so they plant with intention. And here's a detail a lot of people miss. Pear trees are beautiful. Their spring blossoms fill the orchard with fragrance, and their upright shape makes them ideal for planting along fences or garden edges. So they're not just food, they're function and form. When you walk through an Amish orchard in bloom, there's this quiet, almost sacred feeling in the air. And that's not romanticizing, it's just the result of generations tuning into the land and planting accordingly. Number 3, peaches. Now peaches take a little more care, and the Amish know that. You've got to prune them regularly, watch out for borers and fungal issues, and they don't like late frost one bit. But despite all that, they're still worth the effort. In regions like southern Pennsylvania, northern Indiana, and parts of Ohio, where the climate allows, Amish growers dedicate entire sections of their orchards to peach trees. They grow clingstone varieties for canning and freestone types for fresh eating and baking. During peach season, Amish communities come alive. You'll see crates of ripe peaches stacked in barns, on porch steps, and at the ends of driveways. Families work together peeling, slicing, and packing them into jars. The canning stoves are running hot, fueled by wood or propane, and the air smells like sugar and fruit. Some women make thick peach butter, others prep pie fillings. If they've had a bumper crop, they trade with neighbors or take baskets to local markets. It's not rare to see an entire table full of jars, neatly labeled, sealed tight, lined up like a colorful fruit library. Peaches don't store like apples or pears, so the Amish rely on fast processing to make sure nothing goes to waste. That's part of the charm and the challenge. They dry slices for winter snacks, mash the pulp into fruit leather, and sometimes even ferment small batches into peach vinegar or wine. The pits get saved too. They can be cracked for oil or used in crafts and natural remedies. The peach trees themselves grow quickly and produce heavily, so even though they don't live as long as apples, they earn their place. Plus, the early summer bloom is stunning, like a sea of soft pink that turns a whole field into a painting. And that's the thing about the Amish. They notice beauty, but they never separate it from usefulness. If something is pretty and practical, it gets planted. Number 4, plums. Not every off-grid grower bothers with plums, but the Amish know better. They don't just grow them for variety. Plums are part of their survival system. First off, the types they choose aren't the delicate ones you see at fancy markets. Amish growers prefer hardy varieties like Damson, Stanley, and Green Gage, old world cultivars that have been around for centuries. These trees can handle cold winters, spring frosts, even late season rains. They're rugged, dependable, and perfect for people who don't have time or money to baby their orchards. The Amish appreciate how plums give back in more ways than one. Fresh, they're juicy and rich, but what makes them especially valuable is their preservability. Amish kitchens are known for drying fruit, and plums are perfect for that. They use solar dehydrators, just simple wooden frames with mesh screens stacked near sunny windows or on outdoor racks. Once dried, the plums are stored in glass jars or cloth bags and kept in cool pantries. Done right, they'll keep for years, no electricity needed. And they're not just a snack, they end up in stews, breads, or cooked down into thick, almost caramel-like sauces during winter months. Plum jam is another big one. It's made in wide, shallow pans over wood stoves, sometimes with honey or just the fruit's own sugars. This jam ends up on everything from pancakes to roast meats. And here's something else. Plum pits don't go to waste. Some families roast and grind them for traditional drinks, and others toss them into compost heaps where they help aerate the mix. But maybe the most underrated thing about plum trees is how little they ask for in return. They don't need constant spraying or complicated pruning schedules. a good winter trim, some mulch, maybe a sprinkle of wood ash, and they're good to go. That makes them ideal for Amish families who are balancing dozens of tasks, from milking cows to sewing clothes to schooling their kids. Plums just quietly do their job, season after season. And when the trees blossom in spring, they transform the orchard into something poetic. Clouds of soft white flowers buzzing with bees. It's one of those small, beautiful moments the Amish live for. Not flashy, not commercial, just natural cycles doing what they were meant to do. That's the root of it. Plums fit into a system where nothing is wasted, nothing is rushed, and everything serves a purpose. When your life is built on self-sufficiency, trees like that are gold. Number 5, cherries. Cherries are a seasonal showstopper in Amish communities, and they serve more than one purpose. Both sweet and sour varieties are grown, but sour cherries, especially Montmorency, are where the real action is. They're more dependable, less likely to suffer from pests, and better suited to the climate in most Amish regions. Plus, they're not fragile. You don't have to worry about them splitting from too much rain like some sweet types do. Harvest time is intense. Cherries ripen fast and all at once, which means families work sunup to sundown to get them off the trees. It's not uncommon to see kids perched on ladders, older siblings with buckets strapped to their waists, and adults hauling crates full of ruby red fruit back to the house. It's a group effort, a whole family operation. The Amish don't hire out labor or bring in machines, they rely on each other. That's part of the culture. If the tree is heavy with fruit, you gather together and get it done. Once the harvest is in, the preserving starts. Sour cherries don't last long fresh, so they're either canned right away or baked into pies and dumplings. Amish cherry pie isn't just a dessert, it's a tradition, often served at Sunday gatherings or community meals. The filling is made with little more than cherries, flour, and a touch of sugar. Sometimes honey if they're avoiding processed ingredients, and even the pits aren't wasted. Some families infuse them into homemade vinegar, while others keep them for crafts or even use them as natural heating pads, sewn into cloth bags and warmed by the fire. One thing people don't realize is how well cherries fit into a diversified farm. The trees aren't too big, so they work in smaller yards or even along fence lines. Their early spring blossoms feed the bees. Their leaves drop nitrogen back into the soil. And when the fruit comes in, it's not just for humans. Livestock get the dropped or damaged cherries, adding variety to their diet. Nothing is tossed. That's the Amish way. Cherries are a seasonal rush, but that's part of their value. They teach timing, teamwork, and stewardship. When the trees bloom, it's a reminder that abundance doesn't last forever. You've got to work for it when it comes. And if you do it right, those little red fruits feed your family all year long. In jams and sauces and memories. They're more than fruit, they're a lesson, wrapped in flavor. Number 6, grapes. Grapes might not be the first fruit you think of when imagining an Amish homestead, but they're more common than you'd guess. Walk behind almost any Amish house and you're likely to spot grapevines climbing along wooden trellises or stretched out between posts near the garden. Concord grapes are the favorite. Rich, tart, and deeply purple. These vines are survivors. They require almost no fuss, and once established, they produce for decades. The Amish love grapes not just because they're tasty, but because they're flexible. Fresh grapes are eaten right off the vine, of course, but the real value comes after harvest. First, there's juice. Families have hand-cranked presses, sometimes passed down from grandparents, that crush the grapes into thick, dark juice. This is canned in quart jars and stacked in pantries, ready to be pulled out in winter when colds hit or guests stop by. Some Amish women use the juice to make elderberry grape tonics, believed to boost immunity. Then there's jelly. It's thick, sweet, and deeply flavorful, made in huge batches and poured into sterilized jars while still hot. It shows up on bread, pancakes, and even roast meats. The Amish don't use boxed pectin much. Instead, they boil the fruit down slowly until it gels naturally. It takes longer, but the result is cleaner, richer, and doesn't rely on store-bought ingredients. That's important when your whole goal is self-reliance. In some homes, a small amount of wine or vinegar is made, not for parties or profit, but for cooking, preservation, or natural cleaning. It's not uncommon to find a jug of homemade vinegar aging in a corner of the kitchen, covered with cheesecloth and labeled with a handwritten date. Grape leaves don't get wasted either. They're soaked and packed into brine, then used later for wrapping vegetables or making stuffed rolls during big meals. That kind of full-use mindset is part of what makes Amish agriculture so efficient. What's really beautiful about grapes, though, is their reliability. Once those vines are rooted, they'll keep producing with very little input. Some light pruning, a bit of compost in the spring, and you're set. And they're not just useful, they're beautiful. When late summer hits and the vines are heavy with fruit, there's something quietly magical about walking under them, feeling the shade and smelling that sweet, earthy scent. In a world where so many people depend on store shelves for every bit of food, grapes are a quiet act of rebellion. Simple, strong, and endlessly generous. Number 7, gooseberries. These days, most people wouldn't even recognize a gooseberry if they saw one. You won't find them in most grocery stores, and even farmers markets rarely carry them. But in Amish country, gooseberries are far from forgotten. These small, round, slightly hairy berries are still a staple on many Amish homesteads. And once you understand what they offer, you'll see why they've never gone out of style in these communities. Gooseberries thrive in conditions that frustrate other berries. They actually prefer cooler climates and partial shade, which makes them ideal for planting near the sides of barns, sheds, or tree lines. And because they're naturally resistant to many pests and diseases, they fit perfectly into the Amish philosophy of low intervention, chemical-free farming. Most families plant them once, and with a little pruning and some weeding, the bushes keep producing for years. That kind of reliability is gold in a lifestyle where self-sufficiency isn't just a trend, it's the foundation of survival. The berries themselves come in different colors, green, red, even purple depending on the variety, and they start off tart. Some are so sour they'll make your lips pucker, but the Amish know exactly how to tame that sharpness. Once cooked, gooseberries mellow into a beautifully complex flavor, something between rhubarb and sour cherry, but with their own unique bite. That makes them perfect for pies, crumbles, and thick jams that don't need a ton of sugar to shine. A properly made gooseberry pie is something you don't forget. It's bold, it's rustic, and it tastes like summer in the country. In Amish kitchens, gooseberries are used not just for sweets, but also for savory dishes. Some families make a simple gooseberry sauce that pairs with roasted meats, or is spooned over homemade bread and cheese. Others dry them for winter use, or can them whole in syrup. Every family seems to have their own way of preserving the harvest, and none of it goes to waste. Even the discarded stems and skins end up in compost piles feeding next year's garden. The bushes themselves also have multiple uses. Their dense, thorny structure makes them a great choice for natural fencing or boundary planting. They help keep chickens and livestock out of garden beds, and birds tend to leave them alone, probably because the thorns give them second thoughts. And speaking of birds, while some Amish might cover their bushes with simple netting during peak season, most just pick fast and often, making berry picking a daily task for the whole family during harvest weeks. There's also a bit of pride tied to gooseberries. They're old-fashioned, sure, but that's part of the appeal. Growing them connects the Amish to their ancestors, to traditions that have lasted for centuries. It's not about nostalgia, it's about knowledge that still works. When you live off the land, you respect the crops that keep showing up, season after season, even when times get tough. Gooseberries might not be glamorous, but they're dependable. They're tough, and they turn into something truly special with a little work. That's exactly the kind of fruit the Amish are drawn to. Number 8, apricots. If you ask any Amish grower about apricots, they'll likely tell you they're a bit of a gamble, but a good one when it pays off. These trees bloom early in the spring, which means if there's a late frost, the blossoms can get wiped out before fruit even begins to set. But when the season cooperates, apricots are pure gold. And the Amish, who understand the timing of nature better than most, have learned how to give these delicate trees their best shot. You'll often see apricot trees planted close to barns or outbuildings where they get a little shelter from the wind. Some families even plant them along south-facing walls to absorb warmth and cut the chill from late spring nights. These small moves, based on generations of trial and error, can mean the difference between a full harvest and none at all. The trees themselves aren't demanding once they're established. They grow fast, and when they produce heavy. Apricots tend to ripen all at once, which means for about a week or two, the kitchen is absolutely overflowing with fruit. The Amish waste no time when that moment comes. Apricots get halved and laid out on screen racks in the sun, sometimes with a bit of lemon juice to preserve color, sometimes just as they are. Drying them this way turns them into chewy, tangy slices of sunshine that last all winter. You'll also find apricot preserves on pantry shelves. Thick, sweet, and full of flavor. Some families use them for cookies or pastries. Others enjoy them simply on homemade bread with fresh butter. What's especially interesting is how nothing goes to waste. The apricot pits don't get tossed. They're cracked open, and the kernels inside are used in traditional remedies or even pressed into oil. A few households use the inner shell for natural dyes or homemade scrubs. It's all part of the Amish ethic of full circle use, where every part of the harvest finds a purpose. And then there's the beauty of the tree itself. In bloom, apricots are breathtaking. Pale pink petals against rough, dark bark, often the first sign of life after a long winter. That early bloom makes them a symbol of renewal in a way, something hopeful in the cold mud of March or April. They don't just feed the body, they feed the spirit. Maybe that's why, even with the risks, Amish families keep planting them. Because in farming, as in life, sometimes the best things come with a little uncertainty. Apricots are a gamble worth taking, and when they hit, they remind you exactly why you keep coming back to the land. Number 9. Service berries. These little-known berries, also called June berries or Saskatoons, are one of the Amish community's best-kept secrets. Most outsiders have never heard of them, but among those who live close to the land, service berries are a quiet favorite. They look a bit like blueberries, though the flavor is deeper with hints of almond and cherry. The Amish grow them not just for their taste, but for their resilience and beauty. These bushes are tough, fast-growing, and thrive in places where other fruit struggles. One of the best things about service berries is their early season. They ripen in June, long before other fruit crops come in. So they give families something sweet and fresh after the long, storage-heavy months of winter. For people who preserve and plan all year round, that early harvest is more than just convenience. It's morale. During harvest, Amish families will send kids out with baskets in the morning, and by evening there'll be pies cooling on windowsills, jars being filled with jam, and fresh berries served alongside homemade yogurt or baked into muffins. But there's more to service berries than just fruit. The bushes are beautiful, and Amish gardeners often use them in landscaping around homes, schools, and churches. In early spring, they bloom with clouds of small white flowers. By summer, the berries come, and in autumn, the leaves turn fiery red and orange. That makes service berries a rare combination of functional and ornamental, food-producing plants that are also a joy to look at year-round. Because birds love the berries just as much as people do, many Amish use simple netting or time their picking just right. It's a bit of a race, but again, it turns into a daily rhythm, a shared task. Grandparents, parents, kids, everyone joins in. It's more than work. It's a seasonal ritual. The berries themselves are highly nutritious, packed with antioxidants and fiber, and they don't need much sugar when preserved. The Amish dry them on screens for winter snacks, or add them into pancake batters and fruit loaves. Sometimes they even mash them into juice or syrup, which goes into herbal tonics or just gets poured over oatmeal or fried cornmeal mush. Service berries may not have the star power of apples or peaches, but they represent the heart of Amish gardening, quiet usefulness, beauty and simplicity, and rewards that come from paying attention. These are not flashy plants, but they give a lot, ask for little, and come back year after year like clockwork. That's exactly the kind of plant the Amish trust: reliable, humble, and deeply rooted. Number 10. Mulberries. If there's one fruit that defines the concept of low effort, high return, it's the mulberry. You won't find mulberries on glossy supermarket shelves, but out on Amish farms, these trees are surprisingly common. And once you know their value, you'll understand why. They grow fast, they grow big, and they grow just about anywhere. In fact, most Amish don't even plant them in tidy orchards. They'll let them sprout along driveways, near barns, even beside the chicken coops. That's not neglect, it's strategy. A mature mulberry tree produces pounds and pounds of fruit every summer. And unlike most fruit trees, they don't need pruning, fertilizing, or even much watering. That's part of their magic. When the berries ripen, they drop by the dozens. Kids run around with buckets, hands stained purple, while chickens and ducks feast on whatever hits the ground. It's a full system harvest. People eat the fruit, animals eat the fruit, and what's left fertilizes the soil. Nothing is wasted. The fruit itself is sweet and juicy, kind of like a cross between a blackberry and a grape. Amish families use them in pies, but more often you'll see the berries cooked down into syrup. Poured over pancakes, added to iced teas, or bottled for winter, mulberry syrup is a quiet favorite. Some households dry the berries in the sun and use them in trail mixes or baked goods. And in certain regions, mulberry wine is still made in small batches for personal use. The leaves of the tree aren't just filler either. Some families use them as supplemental feed for rabbits or goats, especially during lean times. And in true Amish fashion, nothing gets thrown out. Even fallen branches from pruning or storms become firewood or get chipped for mulch. What's beautiful about mulberries is how they just work. You plant it, or sometimes it just shows up. And within a few years, you've got fruit. No chemicals, no drama. They blend right into the farm ecosystem without making demands. And that ease fits the Amish mindset. If it grows without fuss and feeds people, it's welcome. There's also something incredibly grounding about walking under a mulberry tree in full fruit. The ground dappled with berries, the air full of birds and bees. It's the kind of moment that reminds you nature provides, if you let it. Mulberries aren't about control, they're about trust. And for the Amish, that fits perfectly. They've built a life around faith in steady things, and a mulberry tree quietly giving year after year fits that picture exactly.